Bonjour, comment ça va? Alors, so I'm going to show you what we're doing this week, or I'm going to explain to you the lessons. So it's going to be week 11 and 12. And of course, we're going to start with step one, which is the lesson. And since we're doing the family unit, so we've been learning about description and how you describe someone. And in this lesson, we are going to learn how you use descriptive adjectives in French and how you change them based on the gender and the number. So here we go. So the objective for the lesson is I can describe myself and others by using French. So what is a descriptive adjective? In French, we call them les adjectifs qualificatifs or les adjectifs de description. And so, like, we have different ways of saying it. So, descriptive adjectives are the most commonly used kind of adjectives. So, most of the adjectives that we have in French or even in English, the one that we use a lot are the descriptive adjectives. And why do we use them? We use them to describe different qualities of a noun being modified. So, basically, you use descriptive adjectives to add more information to a noun, which is when it comes to the information that you're adding qualities. Basically, you're describing them. In French, descriptive adjectives usually follow the nouns they modify. So when you have a noun, which is it's like the opposite for you. So when you have a noun, which is whatever we're describing, it's just going to be the adjective will be following that noun in French. And they might also follow forms of the verb être, which is il est gentil. He is nice. So sometimes you're going to see that too. So we have different rules when it comes to using adjectives in French, and I want you to be ready because you're gonna have to remember them. So I put the rules in a red color just to help you remember. So the first thing, I'm gonna summarize it. I'm not gonna read the whole sentences, but I am going to summarize it. That's the good thing when it comes to watching the update videos, or because it helps you just go over the presentation, the whole presentation. So the first thing that I want you to remember, which is rule one, remember that most adjectives in French, they end with an e for the feminine form. So we already passed the idea that, oh, we have masculine words and we have feminine words, we have male and female. Even objects in French, they have gender. So we have the masculine ones, we have the feminine ones, and we have the plural ones, which is the ones that they end with an s or they end with an x at the end. It means that it's more than one. So the first thing that you need to know is that most adjectives that we have in French, if we want to switch them from their original form, which is the original form for adjectives in French is the masculine form. So to switch them from the masculine to the feminine, most of them they will have an e at the end, which is that's the good thing is that most adjectives we will add an e for feminine form. And here is a sentence: un homme parfait, a perfect man. I don't know why I use that adjective, but there is no such thing as a perfect man. So as you see, parfait is the adjective that is describing homme, which is man. And if I want to switch it to the feminine form, of course, I'm going to switch to the femme, which is woman. And the way we say a perfect woman, une femme parfaite. So as you see, we added an E for female. When it comes to the pronunciation for male, we don't pronounce that T, we say parfait. For female, because it ends with an E, we will have to pronounce the T and we say parfaite. Okay? Parfait, parfaite. It means perfect. And that's rule one, which is most adjectives, we add an E. Here you go, rule number two. So first one we said, most of them, we add an E at the end. When it comes to rule number two, when an adjective naturally ends with an E, we do not change the feminine form. It means that we keep that E. So remember, the natural form of an adjective is the masculine form. So if the masculine form ends with an E, we don't change it. We keep the E. We're not going to add another E. We just keep it like that. And here's an example. Un homme agréable, which is a pleasant man. And then if I want to switch it to the feminine, une femme agréable. So same thing, we didn't change it. Okay, so far we have two rules. First one, we add an e to most adjectives to change them to the feminine form. Rule number two, no change at all. If the adjective ends with an e, for feminine we keep it as it is. Rule number three, which is this one is different. Here you go. When it comes to number three, if we have an adjective that is naturally, which is the masculine form, ends with an X at the end, the feminine form, you're going to have to remove that X and replace it with SE. Remember, like beginning of the year when I had a video and I told you that every time when you remove something, uh, in French, you're going to have to replace it with something else. And here is another example because we did the ER verbs when we were doing that. So again, when you remove the X for the masculine form, feminine form, replace it with SE. So, il est heureux, he is happy. So, heureux, the H is silent. So you see that it ends with an X for happy. If I want to switch it to the feminine form, I will have to say, elle est heureuse. Why it's not moving? Elle est heureuse. So I remove the X and I put an SE. So that's rule number three. And here are some of the examples of some of the adjectives. So content, contente, female, lent, lente, gourmand, gourmande, déçu, déçu, timide, timide. You see, it has an E, we didn't change it. Malade, which is sick, it has an E. Malade, feminine, we didn't change it. Amoureux ends with an X. Amoureuse, the female, we dropped the X and we removed the X and we replaced it with SE. So these are the three rules. Add an E for most of them. Keep the E. If the masculine ends with an E, the feminine will stay the same. And if it ends with an X, we replace the X with an SE. So rule number four, adding to the SE if the adjective, the masculine form or the natural form of the adjective ends with an F, the feminine form, we're going to remove that F because we don't want it. For the feminine, we're going to have to replace it with a VE. So you're going to see the example. Il est actif, which is he is active. Feminine, elle est active. She is active. Okay, you see, like even when in the speaking, you're going to see that the pronunciation is different. Il est actif, elle est active. So that's rule number four. Rule number five, if the adjectives end with an IEN, you're going to have to double the N. And then for the feminine form, you're going to have to add another N and an E. So add an E if the adjective ends with an IEN. For example, I'm going to have to remove this. Okay. Oops. I'm going to go back. Sorry. It's my laptop is very slow. Sorry. So, le garçon est canadien. The boy is Canadian. La fille est canadienne. So we added an NE. So most of them ends with an E. Rule number one. Rule number two, keep the E. If the masculine ends with an E, keep that E. Now, rule number three, if it ends with an X, replace the X with an SE for feminine. Rule number four, if it ends with an F, replace the F for a VE. Replace the F with a VE for the feminine. And then if it ends with an IEN, add another NE for the feminine. So here we go. Rule number six. If the masculine form ends with an E with an accent, it's not just an E with an accent because we pronounce it. The feminine form, you're gonna have to add an E. So the only case when you're gonna have to add another E if it's the masculine form ends with an E with an accent because that's not an E anymore. It is an A. The sound is an A because of the accent. So, le bus est réservé. So you hear that A at the end, réservé. The bus is reserved. La salle est réservée. The room is reserved because the room is feminine in French and bus is masculine. How do you know? Bus, which is the bus, starts with an LE, it means it's masculine. Salle starts with an LA, it means it's feminine. So add another E if the word or masculine ends with an E accent. And rule number 7, if the masculine form ends with an IL, you are going to add another LE, same as the IEN. So you're going to have to double the letter. So it's going to be the same thing for this one. If it ends with an IL, you're going to have to double the letter L and add an E. So, le garçon est gentil. The boy is nice, gentil. La fille est gentille. So we pronounce it the same way. It's a E at the end. It's like an E and Y, E or E. So gentille. So la fille est gentille, the girl is nice. Okay, so this is the plural form. Plural form is easy. Most adjectives, which is 99% of the adjectives in French, same as in English. The plural form, we add an S. So if I want to say he is smart, so it's gonna be intelligent. They are smart, male. Ils sont intelligents, and then you add an S. And we don't pronounce the S, the plural S. We don't pronounce it in French. In English, we do, but in French, no. So if you're talking about a group of people and they're all female, you're going to have to change the adjective to the feminine form and then add the S. So if I'm saying they're smart, female, I'm going to have to add the E for smart, intelligent, and then I will have to add an S for the plural. If the adjective ends with an X for masculine, you don't change the plural form. The feminine, you always change the X to an SE, and then you add an S for the plural form. So, as I said, the plural form is so easy, and then we're going to see examples. So there are some irregular French adjectives, and I have a list for you that they do not follow the rule, which is the one that we just saw. So these are some of the irregular adjectives. So I'm going to read them and we're going to see this next year too. So this is just like an introduction, but we will see this more next year. So here we go. Singular form and plural form. So we say beau for masculine, belle for feminine, and you spell it like this if the word that comes after is a vowel or starts with a silent H. Nouveau, nouvelle, fou, folle, mou, mâle, vieux, vieille. And then the plural form, as you see, it's an X. And then for these, because they end with an EAU and they are irregular. So as I said, you don't have to worry about this parts because this is just an introduction. And I know that some of you will be using like the word beautiful or old. So that's why I have this. But you are going to see it next year in level 2. So just remember that in English, adjectives are always found in front of the noun. However, most French adjectives follow the noun they modify. So un livre vert is going to be green book. For us, we say book green. So it's the opposite. Un professeur intelligent, smart teacher is going to be teacher smart. Un élève intelligent, student smart. So it's just the opposite of how we do it in English. So here you go, another list of some adjectives that they have irregular form. So it's cher, first one, gentil, gros, grosse, long, long, naïf. Naïf, you're going to need this for the quiz that you will be taking. So all the vocab that you will find in the quiz, it's already here. So just use the notes. Paresseux, paresseuse, sérieux, sérieuse, travailleur, travailleuse, vieux, and vieille. So these are all the adjectives that you need for this unit, or at least for this week. And then, as I said, let me put that. Yeah, as I said, study step one, read the notes before you take the quiz. Allez, bonne chance et au revoir.